Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to have you. I am Robin Dabney, HSI Division Program Specialist. We're excited to be hosting this conversation on the important topic of internal controls. Before we get started, please know that this meeting is recorded and being transcribed. We would like to thank the HSI Division team who may be here on the call, to include any OPE colleagues, for their attendance and support. I do want to recognize the HSI Division Director, Dr. Stacy Silajesovic. But more importantly, I'm just so excited that we have here with us today during this virtual office hour, the department's grant management and policy team, David Downey and Dr. Sandra Toro, to include the remaining team, Adam Graham, Cleveland Knight, and Anthony Johnson, who will be presenting today on this important topic for internal controls, entitled Embracing Internal Controls to Ensure Successful Project Outcomes and Fiscal Accountability. Feel free to use the chat. We want this session to be not only engaging and informal, but we want to respond to any of your questions that you may have, and we ask for your input, but most important, your participation today. So without further ado, and just know that the slides will be forwarded to you after the webinar, and I am recording, so that information will be forwarded to you after today's webinar. So I will turn it over to the grants management and policy team. David, Sandra, are you all on the call?
We are here. We are here. Great to be with you, Robin, and hello, everybody. Wonderful to take a little bit of time out of your schedules to talk about internal controls. I'm David Downey. My colleague, Dr. Sandy Toro, just popped on the screen, waved at us. Sandy, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you.
So what we're going to do is we talk about internal controls, and we've got a set group of slides here. But that's just kind of a frame of reference. We're not going to talk on every slide. Robin's going to give you some of you'll get this PowerPoint presentation when we're done. But we just want to have as much of a conversation as we go through this. And some of the high points that we're talking about today, Sandy, what are we talking about today? As I always want to know, I always will come to you for that important question.
Yes, thank you. So we're meeting with you. We're just going to identify some key resources and talk about the importance of internal controls, review some best practices. We're also going to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of some existing internal control practices and procedures and tell you where you can find where those are. We're going to help you develop some internal control practices. I mean, we're sure you already have some good information that you can share with us. And we ask that you please do, as we move throughout the presentation, feel free to chime in the chat, or you can unmute yourselves at any time and just pipe in. And we do this because we want to help ensure that what you do is consistent with any changes, in terms of SEA or local government leadership, and you know what to do when things happen and how to control for things like turnover or, changes in priorities, things like that. But overall, we want to help you ensure successful project outcomes, and that is our main goal for today.
That's the name of the game, folks. So let's see here. No question is too obvious or too easy. We are recording so that other people can watch and refer back to, but feel comfortable. No one is keeping score. We're all here to learn and grow together. And that's the intent of today's program. So big piece here, we'd want to emphasize that this work is forged in a collective stewardship. We have shared goals, but different roles in this process. Part of our role here, I would say with Robin and her team, the most important role that they have is in monitoring the grants and working with you to ensure that your grant projects are being successful and that you're staying in compliance. Those pieces go hand in hand.
Yep. And the first thing we want to talk about is risk. And risk can be a scary word. But we always go back to the definition from the Code of Federal Regulations, and this is the citation for you. And we try to bring these in, the citations, throughout so that we're all on the same page. But in general, risk is a measure of the potential inability to achieve your overall program objectives within the defined requirements, and that's related to cost, to schedule, and to the legislative authority and grant management practice. So the key word here is potential. So risk has to do with looking toward the future and what might happen. So there are things that we need to consider that have to do with materiality, complexity, history, and propensity. And that little mouse comes from David. And so there, we're going to come back to this mouse, but he's considering the potential risk if he tries to get that cheese. So always think about, what might happen in the future if you don't do something or if you do something.
That's right. And I always think of it depends on if you're a homeowner or a renter, whether you're seeing the mouse trying to find a mitigation strategy to get the cheese, or as a homeowner where you want to make sure your own property is taken care of, if the mitigation strategy is to get rid of the risk of the mouse. But that's as cheesy as we get this early in the morning on the East Coast. When we think about risk and this potential, like Sandy said, couple of takeaways. There is always an element of risk involved with our grant projects. There's always an element of risk that something could go wrong, just in general, with our organizations, in our home life, our professional life. We're mandated before we put new money out on the street to evaluate the risk of our potential applicants or our returning grantees through non-competing continuations. It's a cycle. And basically, as we talk about that definition, what could go wrong, what's likely to go wrong, if it goes wrong, how bad will that affect us? What can we do to prevent it from occurring? Let's implement some strategies and monitor that to see if we're reducing that level of risk, and we start the process over. It never ends. It's ongoing. We want to embrace that. And as we start to kind of thinking about our internal controls conversation, we want to thinking about this key piece here, that there's always that element of risk, and we always have to be vigilant to be proactive in staying ahead of any risks that evolve or change, or new ones that come about that we become aware of over time.
Yeah, so we wanted to ask you, and feel free to answer in the chat, what are some of the things you think about when you consider risk? So what are some of the risks that impact you as a manager of a federal grant?
Sure.
And you can also mute yourself.
Yeah, please talk or put it in the chat. And again, if you don't want to say, well, I don't want to say this risk about my organization, we're just saying that these could be general risks too. I mean, these are things that you could have heard about with other organizations. We're not saying, oh, Downey Nonprofit has this big problem with travel approvals or whatever. But what are some of the risks that you think would be affecting your grant projects or the grant program in general? What do you think?
Yeah. And Robin is not taking notes, so she's not going to follow up and say, oh, they talked about,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're not doing that. It's just a conversation. What stands out to you about risks that you see? Because there's always an element of risk, no matter how good you are. It's that, let's see. Oh, leadership changes within all levels of the organization. Challenges in recruitment. Please speak up.
Well, hi, Rob Daly from New Jersey City University. Hi, everybody. So one thing would be build it and they will come, and then no one comes. So, that's one risk that I've seen recently.
Okay. Well, that's fair. And we have to start thinking. I'm glad. Let's see. Oh, we got another hand up. Donoso, please.
Yes, hi. Just to follow up on the previous comment that you write and you get the proposal with all these ideas, but then you realize that the population you're targeting doesn't quite match the requirements from the Department of Education. and income-wise and all that. So it was a mismatch between what's expected from the Department of Education and what's in the proposal. Like, I've seen that.
And candidly, with this, I appreciate the issue. The project, as we fund these applications, they should do their best to live up to what they had said to do in their applications. When you can't, there is the possibility that it would impact conditions. It could impact how your grant project is viewed going down the road. How many of you, show of hands, just out of curiosity, how many of you played a role in writing the grants that you're funded? We've got over 100 people here. Wow. So show of hands, or like emojis. Give me a thumbs up if you wrote your grants that you're funding. Okay. Not so. All right. If you didn't write the grants you're currently administering, give me an emoji of like shock, or that kind of that scared face. That face. Okay. All right. Okay. Whoops. I hit the button wrong. Sorry. Okay. Good deal. All right. And we want you to live up to what is in the application. When you can't, we've got to have some conversations between you and the program staff. How they determine substantial progress goes a long way. And down the road, because we want to make sure that applications are written that are ambitious but realistic. And we don't do anything that kind of negates the competitive process. So we'll be working with you on those issues, but I appreciate your candor in how to address that kind of an issue. That's more on a programmatic design aspect than what we'd kind of intended to talk about. But with Robin, and we can sit down and work with you through her. She's your point of contact on how you define success under those circumstances as we go forward.
It looks like we had a hand raised. Did someone have a question? Okay, maybe it was a legacy hand.
Yeah, sometimes I say, raise your hand, and I mean to say emoji, or show the reaction. That might be it. But if you do have a question, feel free to speak up, raise your hand, or put something in the chat. So, all right, but a lot of you are new to the process. Well, we'll work with you on these things as best we can. So once we've enacted a strategy, we've monitored to see if it's effective or not, then we can say the risk is mitigated for the time being. But risks evolve and change over time as we go. So you want to be mindful of that. Now, another important tool to note is the single audits requirements here in 2 CFR. See subpart F in part 200. Right now, GAN attachment 3, the grant award notification, notes that you've got to submit, you've got to conduct a non-federal audit if you expend $750,000 or more in federal funds a year. That's not just one grant project, that's the accumulation of all federal dollars at your organization. That threshold is going to raise to $1 million beginning October 1, but that's an institutional, not a grant project response. Robin just put the link to 2 CFR in the chat. There looks like subpart F for the audits. So that's one of the requirements we have. And with that, helps go into our segue, some of our common audit findings. Sandy, what stands out to you? Because you've had the more recent program office experience than I have. What stands out to you with some of these common audit findings and your own experience?
Yeah. So I used to spend a lot of time looking at paper audits that grantees used to send me using snail mail, which was a lot of fun. I would get a big stack on my desk, and I'd go straight to the findings, and hopefully there were none. But if there were, then I'd go back to the beginning of the document and start reading through and try to figure out, okay, is this a big deal or is it not a big deal? And if it was a big deal, then I'd have to walk over to our lawyer's office and say, hey, we might have an issue. What do we do? So some of the common audit findings that we come across are just missing time and effort reports. So that's something that you can prioritize and fix. Poor record keeping is also common. Not getting the right approvals, not getting prior approval, and also lots of issues with cost share and matching. And in my experience, often applicants would promise lots of potential cost share or in kind because they wanted to impress reviewers. And even if it wasn't required, they would still promise you know, pie in the sky kinds of cost share and match. And then when it came time to pay up, they just couldn't meet the match and, would try to delay. But, don't overpromise. And, if you do, you have to meet the match and document, document, document. In terms of mitigation, I've seen many issues with incorrect indirect cost rates and also applying both the correct rate incorrectly and applying the incorrect rate incorrectly. So, you know, your math will be checked. And something that I've told program officers to do is to be kind and say, can you walk through your math with me? Show me how you got that. And you can do that with your staff too. Sometimes things don't look right, and maybe they took a different approach, and they can show you how they got those numbers, and then you can understand where the mistakes were. Unallowable costs, the cost principles will show you what's allowable, what's unallowable, both for indirect and direct costs. Sometimes costs are not in the cost principles. It doesn't mean it's not allowable, but it means you might have to have a conversation with your staff and potentially with your legal counsel to try to figure out, is this an allowable cost? And then you might have to have that call with Robin and say, hey, Robin, we have a question. And we've seen this a lot with technology and things like subscriptions, that in the past, you could buy a box with a CD, but now it's in the cloud. And so, how do you account for that? Subrecipient monitoring, lots of issues there. We actually have a course online, which David will talk about later on today, that focuses specifically on subrecipient monitoring that you can check out. And then, of course, the lack of internal controls, which is the focus of what we're presenting today.
And, all of these things, they go back to performance and compliance. If you don't have the records to show that you've carried out the grant project, if you don't have the records to show that you've spent the money wisely, correctly, wisely is a little bit subjective, I suppose, but accurately according to the grant and the regs. If you can't prove it, then you can't prove that you didn't do wrong either. So you want to have these good records. And this is so important when we bolded it, part of our conversation today, the lack of strong internal controls. As we go to the next slide, yes, it's an organizational requirement. The audits, not a grant project. So if you have one grant that's $750,000 or 8 grants that add up to $750,000 or more for either case, then your organization has a non-federal audit that they must submit. GAN Attachment 3 outlines those requirements. Now, when we talk about internal controls, and again, the audit is a lack of internal controls or lack of adhering to existing internal controls, the term is, the definition for that is a process affected by an entity's oversight body, management, and other personnel that provides a reasonable assurance. Not foolproof, not 100%. There's always an element of risk. And even the best internal controls can have a little bit of a gap issue. And the internal controls are going to broadly cover 3 main areas: operations, reporting, and compliance. We've got a hand up, and I want to make sure that we get to that person. If you've got your hand up, please feel free to speak up. Is it Adrian? No, they muted themselves now. I don't know if you make
We,
sure
we
I.
also have a question in the chat.
Oh, let's
that
see
I
what's in
wanted
the chat. That's all right. See, I see you. Thanks for confirming. Can
Are
you
the,
read that, Sandy? I think I
yep.
have the.
Are the institution time efforts report enough? And Corinne shared a reference to documentation of personnel expenses. And I was going to say, we don't at our level get into the weeds about things like timesheets. So that would be a conversation you'd want to have with your program officer. Typically, program officers won't ask you for that level of documentation unless there's a concern, and then they will want to see your documentation.
Right. But whatever, a phrase here that's really important is consistent with institutional policy. So you want to make sure that
Yeah.
You're with it, that you've got some way to document and measure it. And generally, most organizations, they're going to want to know, well, did Downey really show up today? Did he do anything productive for the organization? And how are we proving that? So those kind of things. So generally there'll be something. We don't usually request them, but if we're conducting a site visit or if an audit takes place, there should be some documentation that will support those things. The next question is it Donoso? I hope Donoso.
Yeah, sorry,
How do I
I'm the one
pronounce
that.
your name? I want to make sure that I
Oh,
want to be respectful.
Ipatia.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that conversation on the time efforts because this has come up quite often. And we had requested direction because some people will say, well, you need to keep a program time sheet of the personnel. But in my organization, which is a very large research university, they have a time and effort system in place because research universities require that, and it is certified by the proper authorities, in the chain of overseeing the time and effort. So I just wanted to clarify, and I think you're saying that, yeah, that is enough because it's consistent with what our institution does.
I think so. Now, Margarita Melendez, and we've got multiple. We've got. I'd forgotten when we started this conversation. We've got Robin's primary grantees, but we've got grantees from across OPE. I understand with this larger group. So again, you want to follow your institutional policies, but you also want to make sure those institutional policies are in compliance with the federal regs in terms of being able to account for the funds.
Yeah,
So
and
David, can I interrupt just quickly? I do want to recognize that we have HSI division team members here on the call. So the grants, those members attending may be one or more under us. We have Margarita, Corinne, Jamise and Jerry, Rick may be on the call as well. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the team, and I apologize if I didn't clarify that in the beginning. Thanks.
That's all right. So, and I would say, as I want to be respectful of time, I don't want to bypass too many issues. In terms of, am I okay, or are we okay as an organization? I would urge you to speak with your program officer and just to see if there's any concerns there too. I don't want to pass the buck, but also in our role, Sandy, in our role, we also don't want to get in the way of how a particular program office and program staff person assigned to your grant is interacting with you on what's sufficient documentation either.
I just wanted to mention, it wasn't at this agency, but I did have an experience with a university where there were challenges or issues with time and effort. And one of the ways it came to light was several applications were submitted, and some of the faculty had so much time accounted for on the different grants that it went well over 100%. once we saw that, we started digging into all of these different grants, some of which had been funded, which were in the proposal phase, and we saw that it just wasn't humanly possible that these faculty members were able to account for so much time. That university was then designated a high risk, and we were not allowed to make awards to that university until the situation was dealt with. We couldn't talk to those faculty members. We couldn't answer any questions. So the time and effort issue is a serious one. But at our level, we're not prescriptive because we don't deal with individual program offices. We tell you to, as David said, follow your organizational practices and then talk with your program officers. But we do notice things like that. So, we tell people, especially when you're working with experts and you're getting, those subject matter experts involved, and you want to get a big name on your grant. Again, sometimes people do that to impress reviewers, but those big names sometimes overextend themselves, and it can be a red flag when you see that name pop up across multiple grant proposals, and you're like, wait a second, how could they be doing all this? And it's just not possible.
Right. Had a quick question in the chat. We'll try to address that, and then as we move on to some more about the inner workings of the internal controls. Time and effort a grant funded project is asked to perform other duties. Is this considered a risk, or is the time spent on other non-grant related activities disallowed? Whether it's disallowed or not depends on the amount of time that is being dedicated. So if you're 100% time on the grant, your work activities should focus on the grant. If it's not 100% time, there's an opportunity to do a little bit of a dance there with that. It's it isn't a risk issue so much as it's a disallowed issue. If if I'm 100% on this grant for HSI, but I'm working on like a program that's funded by HHS or another ed grant, I want to make sure that we understand. If I'm 100% on one, I can't be anything more than that otherwise. So if you're not 100% time, there could be some wiggle room with that. It is, and that's not so much a risk issue. I mean, I guess it is a risk issue, but it's more along the lines that that's not something that you're supposed to be able to do. Generally speaking, sometimes there again, if there's particular one-off activity and you're concerned, contact your program officer to kind of to see if it is appropriate or permissible for your grant.
Yeah. Well, and not to belabor the point, but something that I saw when I was a program officer and was overseeing research grants was the way you'd see that overextension was the double dipping of research findings. So I would read the final reports and I'd read the articles that were produced by the faculty members, and I'd see they were reporting the same findings across multiple grants, which meant they were not doing different research activities. They were just doing one set of activities and double dipping, if that makes sense. So they had to return money.
As we also talk here, we wanted to emphasize as a good resource for understanding internal controls, it's the GAO's Standards for Internal Controls, commonly known as the Green Book. That really is a wonderful tool to kind of help understand the ins and outs of internal controls and having those safeguards in place to ensure the successful implementation of all the organization's activities, not just federal funds, but all the activities that take place within the grant.
And this is a really great resource, and it really spells out in some nice detail different internal control components. So it spells out for you, and this is just an overview, but if you go to the actual source and you'll have the link in the slide deck, it goes through for you what the control environment looks like. It talks about risk assessment, different control activities, It spends some time on information and communication, and it also goes into monitoring. And I did want to address, there was another, oh, thank you. Margarita put the link in the chat. There was another question in the chat from Jordan, who says 40 working weekly hours. Again, that, 40 hours is standard, but we would refer you to your organization's practices for what the appropriate number of working hours would be.
Thank you. And it looks like we have a hand up, so I do want to be respectful of that. We'll see. We're going to try and focus mostly on just internal controls as opposed to going too far into the time and effort. But let's get your question on the record if your hand is up for a question, please. Adrian. Feel free to unmute and speak. I guess not. Maybe that's just up there by accident. We'll move on then. Go back to the chat. Margarita also mentions, please don't forget to refer to the grantee handbook. If you need another copy, please route to your program specialist. Curran, you've got your hand up. Oh, I'm unable to unmute for some reason. Oh, that's very frustrating. Well, Adrian, please type your question in, or if it is a question, and we'll speak to it. But yeah, if your program office sounds great, they created a grantee handbook. If that applies to you as part of the audience here today, make sure that you review that. Let's make sure we're here. Sandy had gone through those key areas. A big takeaway with internal controls we want to highlight: it's about people. It's about using systems. It's about using a process to ensure that the likelihood of success. But it comes down to people. It comes down to a commitment from the person in charge of the organization to the person at the very bottom of that org chart, maybe a summer intern or a volunteer staffer. Everybody has to have a shared commitment to ensuring that the internal controls are followed, that the organization, to be efficient and effective, is putting in place thoughtful checks and balances to ensure that things are going the way they should. Let's see, Karen. So sorry, I was going to mention that Adrian's question is in the chat, but my team is acting up today. Let me scroll back up just to see if there was Adrian's question, if it wasn't addressed. I'm having a little trouble scrolling
sorry,
here.
I don't see it. Maybe if you can
okay.
type it again.
Yeah, please, one more time. Okay. But with the control environment, again, those key pieces, control environment starts with a commitment by the leadership for everyone to be on the same page and to believe in following these process and procedures. It's about integrity. It's about hiring the right people in the first place. And it's setting that tone. But everyone at your organization has to be committed to ensuring the internal controls are forwarded. Let's see. My question is related to OMB audits. How much responsibility for compliance falls in the institution and how much falls on the grant directors? It's an institutional responsibility, and any given year, your grant project isn't going to be audited, depending on the size of the dollars. It breaks down into the major programs, and then they have the A programs and B programs that they look at. But it's an institutional responsibility, and you and your staff will, I'll knock on wood here, generally speaking, not be the sole focus of an individual audit. So a lot of the time when it's taking place in an institution, you might not even see them. Now, smaller organizations, and if you are the big federal grant, then they could be looking at you more frequently. But it's still an institutional and not project director requirement. If you're keeping good records on the programmatic side, and if you're coordinating properly with the accounting business office on the financial side, you're going to be in good shape. A lot of it goes back to those records. Sandy?
And I was just going to mention as an aside, the institution is getting some indirect typically. And, that's what that money is for, is to support the institution as a whole.
Right.
But
Great point.
yeah, so some additional points about the control environment. Management demonstrates a commitment to recruit, train, and retain competent people. So that commitment should filter down. And then there's also the evaluation piece, which is evaluating performance and holding people accountable for their internal control responsibilities. And there have been instances where, we can see in annual and final reports that accountability hasn't taken place. And so one way that program office staff see a lack of accountability is when the numbers don't match. So you see budget numbers don't match the numbers in the budget narrative or on the cover sheet of the APR, and those numbers don't match what was submitted in the original grant application. And so you have to go back to the institution and say, we need to look at your records to find out what's been happening, why there hasn't been a systematic approach to record keeping, who's been maintaining these records, and why hasn't there been any accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Great points. In addition to the control environment, I thought I heard a voice. Just a quick question here to you all. How would you maintain strong internal controls during staff transitions or turnover? That was two things that stood out to me, maybe besides just the time and effort reporting, is you've got people, you've got the staff issues, turnover, also maybe like with retention of students, but what's a way that you might look to maintain those strong internal controls? Let me back up even with that. Feel free to answer that question, but give me a reaction sign if you can. How many of you have seen your organization's established written procedures on how to get travel approved, or just any kind of written established procedures at your organization? Give me a reaction. Give me your reactions if you have. If you haven't, again, we're not keeping score. How many? Give me that shocked face. Give me that face there if you haven't. Couple haven't. If and thank you for your honesty on that for the person who popped those in. If you haven't, here's a homework assignment. Find out, find where those resources are at your organization. Big and small organizations alike should have written, established procedures on how things are to work. Checks and balances, who signs off, as you go forward. And it's not enough just to have them. The first step is to have good ones thoughtfully put in place, but you've got to follow them as you go forward. Let's see here. A couple of answers to these questions. Thank you for playing. Proper training, good record keeping, through process documentation. And we'll hit on this a little bit later too, but in emphasis, maybe for sign off before you can purchase certain supplies or okay a travel or what have you, you'll have maybe 3 sets of sign offs. Perhaps it starts with you as the project director, then it might go to your boss, then it might go to a counterpart office that deals on the finance side. So there might be 3 signatures. There could be more. You, as an organization, you want to look as you're evaluating your controls. Do we need all 3 of those? We've seen sometimes where an organization, they've got five layers of sign off, and you might make the determination that we don't need 5 layers of sign off, we need 4. So it's okay to reduce one if you don't see the value in it, if it's overkill. If you need 5, keep 5. If you figure out, well, there's a problem there and some other office really needed to know, maybe you add 1 or you replace 1. But you should be looking to evaluate how useful these tools are. If they're not doing their job, they need to be refined, enhanced, changed up, strengthened, put some different people in place. It could be a variety of things. Let's see. We've got a couple things here in the chat, and then we'll make sure to go back to questions. Oh, Margarita's got a great comment here. One thing I remind my grantees is to think like an auditor, and auditors are usually CPAs, financial analysts. So it's critical to make sure your records, finances, and other processes and protocols would pass muster. They should really serve as a monetary or programmatic kind of roadmap from the first day in the first year of the grant project to wherever you are right now, and with a clear understanding of what the finish, like the last day in the last grant project should look like. But that's a great comment that you made, Margarita. And Sandy notes that. I remind my grantees to think. Yeah, Sandy agrees there. Let's see. Was there other questions? Got a hand up. Let's see. In Jerry. Please speak up. Jerry, then it looks like Sharon. Maybe not in Jerry. Sharon, go ahead.
Oops, I'm sorry, I was muted.
Oh, that's a hate it when that
I'm
happens.
sorry.
Hey.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly step in and underscore the fact that project directors have a responsibility to create an internal controls manual or program or set of protocols, and also train their teams. I don't think that many project directors realize that this is a big responsibility you have besides the implementation of the grant activity. So from day one, you have to make sure that those internal controls are in place, and it's your job to develop those. I've been on site visits where I've interviewed project team members and they have no idea what the internal controls are for this project. So keep that in mind for all of the project directors out there.
That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. And to help in that process, the internal workings for your grant projects should mirror the internal controls at your institution. So you shouldn't be having to reinvent the wheel. I'll knock on wood as I say that, but they should be aligned with how you do, the work. But you get good guidance here from the program staff. Want to make sure that you're listening to these folks. So great dialogue and exchange of information as we're going forward. Sandy?
Yep. And some of these points have already been mentioned, but hiring practices, your training programs, your whistleblower policies, all of these should be documented so that especially when there's turnover, it's clear to the new people coming on board what all of the policies and procedures are. There should also be clear lines of responsibility and authority, who reports to whom and when. The grants and program administration should be clearly delineated. I can't tell you how many times I've had grantees ask me for a copy of their grant application. And, I roll my eyes and I say, okay, here you go. But I understand because sometimes, they're doing their best. And at least they are reaching out to me for help. And if they didn't, then the situation could be much, much worse. And in general, the fiscal management and operations, you want to try to document as much as you can, exactly as Jerry was saying.
Excellent. Let's see, we've got a comment here. Our internal control manual fits our universities and also develops procedures specific to our grant. We work closely with our post-award team. Oh, that's a great point, great comment there. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, good. Let's go, and then we'll go to the next slide here. Now, as I said, you've got to put together an internal control policies to give that reasonable assurance that things will operate in accordance with the laws and the regs. Make sure that you're able to account for money and get the job done. You want to make sure, though, you don't just write them up, put them in a document, check the box, and you're done. You've got to follow them. And you need, because risks are always evolving and changing, you need to take a realistic, honest look at your organization, your strengths, your weaknesses, and what your risk issues are in the following categories: the strategic risk, big picture, the political, that could be the political internal politics of your organization, not just, I know it's an election year, but we're not talking big picture stuff, internal with that. The talent, the skill sets of the staff, the succession planning that's in place. Staff turnover for our grant projects are a big deal. So we need to have something ready. Well, if Downey resigns from this or gets another position, we've got someone who can act in their place that meets the job description, qualifications, and we'll have a plan set up for a permanent replacement down the road. Financial risk, make sure that audit findings and other things that would undermine the reporting integrity, that you're addressing those findings. Compliance, make sure that you're avoiding anything of fraud, theft, that things like embezzlement or non-compliance with regulations, that those things are addressed. Key point: we think about when we're thinking about issues with the financial risk. There was a court case. It was a grantee. I won't tell you what agency or what program. It's immaterial. But we had a grantee that, with a federal grant, had misused funds, was by a very large amount of money in court, being ready to be sentenced by the judge, and the judge asked the person to make a statement, and this individual said it was just too easy. Just too easy. It started off small. We did, we made a requisition for this supply for my personal use. And we did that again, and we did it again. And before we knew it, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years had been misappropriated for personal gain. And it started off because it was so easy. It was so easy because the internal controls that were in place were not rigorous enough, or they've been put in a document, put in a binder, put on a shelf, and ignored. So you've got to test these things as you go to ensure that they are not too easy just for someone to do whatever. The honor system is important, but we have to have checks and balances in place to ensure that people are behaving honorably. Operational risk, that programs may fail to meet their objectives, mishandle federal funds, and there might have natural disasters, lack of accessible technology. No doubt. I think we're all more aware of things with COVID, with infectious diseases, and how that can close down a grant project today. 2018, 2019, infectious diseases was not on any general domestic grant programs bingo card for risks. After March of 2020, it's on everybody's mind, and it still should be, because we don't know how it changes. Conversations about the avian flu and strains of that maybe being in the food chain. All of those things we have to be mindful of those issues, but we have to make sure to think about how to evaluate risk issues strategically, financially, and operationally to ensure the effectiveness of our grants.
Yep. So exactly as David was saying, in terms of testing and evaluating, there are different kinds of activities that you can do. And we're going to do a little activity with you, but first we want to define, how you can test and evaluate. So there are preventative things you can do, there are detective-like things you can do, and then there are those corrective actions that you can take. So in terms of preventive, these are things that you can do to help management avoid problems before they happen. You want to prevent negative events. And then detective work comes into play when you're trying to uncover issues after they've happened. You're trying to identify the occurrence of a negative event. It's not fun. I've had to do it. It usually involves wading through lots of paperwork, at least for me. And then corrective, you're trying to detect if risk is present and then elicit a response and or a corrective action. So preventive, detective, and corrective. And then I'm going to pass it to David for the next slide.
And you've got to have all three. You have to have safeguards in place to deter these things happening, but you also have to know that there is a possibility, however good your controls are, that'll occur. So you got to find out why, how, and then mitigate to make sure it doesn't happen again. Now, we've got a few just samples here of control activities, and we're wanting you, we're going to go through just a couple of here in the interest of time, but is it preventative, detective, or corrective in this? And if you're looking, what would approvals and authorizations, what category, preventative, detective, or correction, are approvals in? What do you think there? Preventative? Got one preventative? Do we have anybody? Preventative? All right. Hey, you're pretty good at this game, everybody. Yes, it is preventative. It is preventative. Now, let's go to another one. Let's go just to training. What does training do? What corrective act, what control activity is that? Training would be what? More preventatives? Okay. All right. This is a really important one that I'm going to ask now. The next one is segregation of duties. What's segregation of duties? Preventative, detective, or which? Preventative or corrective? Preventative. Okay. How about reconciliations? Reconciling the books. What would reconciling the books maybe fall under? See a lot of preventatives. Anything else for preventative? We're also looking for, with this one, corrective. I see a detective up there. Yes. And so you definitely, with a reconciliation, detective would be good. You got to have all things in place, but you see what some of these internal controls are set up. They're designed to be preventative, to help deter the likelihood that something is going to occur. Internal controls, just as a kind of a quick point, internal controls is that definition and information on it is in subpart D of the uniform guidance, which is in the post-award section, meaning the activities part, when the grant is live. Audits is separate. It talks to us about what went wrong, maybe what went right, but what went wrong. Internals or controls are put in place to ensure that during the life of the grant, the actual activities are going on, that we're able to take care of it. Risk it, and the big picture risk stuff happens before we put the money out on the street. So there's kind of a logical flow of when those pieces take place. All right, good little game there. We got a few minutes left. Sandy, you talk a little bit more about our information and communication.
Yep. So, just thinking about communicating, you want to make sure that you use, we call it quality information to get through the agency goals and objectives, and then internally communicate that necessary information to achieve your objectives. You also want to externally communicate the necessary information to achieve your agency's mission and objectives. And I just wanted to go back for a second regarding the segregation of duties and just make the broader point that, especially at Ed, we recognize there can be a big discrepancy between, smaller organizations and larger organizations. And it's the same with program officers. Some program officers have smaller portfolios, some have large portfolios. And so information and communication can look different depending on the size and the scale. But if you ever need help, just reach out to your program staff, because they can help you come up with strategies for determining, the information to share and how to share it and who to get in touch with. Because I've seen instances where a small organization, even one person operations, they just try to do too much, try to tackle too much, and then, their record keeping and lots of different things suffer. And then we have to get into those corrective actions. So.
Absolutely. Again, monitoring activities should be ongoing as you go forward. I put in the chat the importance of being able to speak candidly as a team. You don't have to necessarily share your big concerns here in this group, but internally, if you know that there are some problems and there's some gaps in when people are signing off or how they're recording their documentation or there's a lack of understanding of what's allowable or unallowable. Talk about that as an organization, because it's not an issue of opening Pandora's box. If you've got a problem, that problem is going to open itself up. And the longer it goes, the worse the problem is. I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to go to switch the slide here. Validating those controls, the deficiency in design, the deficiency in operations. Everything evolves and changes. You could have a great system of internal controls in 2001, but in 2024, if those controls haven't changed, they're probably they're not efficient, they're not effective, because so many things have changed. 2024, 2001, cybersecurity, the risk and the potential dangers have only heightened. So you've got to have systems in place that evolve to respond to the issues, as time goes by. If it's a training issue with you or your staff, and again, one of them would be, a legitimate risk. I didn't write the grant and now I'm in charge of it. Man, read over that program statute, read over those program regs, read over the application, and communicate with predecessors, the grant writers, and certainly the ed program staff person assigned to administering your grant. Quick chief concerns, and I'll turn it back to Sandy. Big things we're always looking for: project goals are not met, excessive or infrequent draws. We'll have whole conversations on that. And poor record keeping and fiscal accountability, or lack of fiscal accountability. Those certainly speak to internal control concerns. What are things we're looking for, Sandy? Put a positive spin on it.
Exactly. We want to end on a high note. So the things that we look for that tell us that things are working well, that there are internal controls in place, you have a good internal control process happening, our regular progress meeting, you're making progress meeting your goals and objectives. You have good record keeping and fiscal accountability. If we ask you a question, you can quickly and easily point us to the answer, and accurate, valid, and reliable reporting, and timeliness. So again, if we ask you a question, you can give us the answer. It's not a problem. There's not a lot of hemming and hawing, rescheduling meetings, bringing lots of different people in to try to help you answer the question because you don't know how or where to get the answer. We've seen lots of different situations where there has to be some kind of getting the story straight before you can come back to the conversation. And we'll review all the documentation, we'll ask you lots of questions, and then our goal is to help you be successful. We want to get you to draw down your funds, achieve your goals and objectives, do all the activities you need to do. We don't want to be punitive. We don't want you not to draw down your money. We want you to spend it, and we want you to do a good job. We want you to be successful. So these are the things we're looking for. These are the things we want you to look for. And again, keep those lines of communication open so that we can do it together.
Absolutely. And we got one other question here. Can we look, or can Ed, your program person, look over your draft internal controls? The quick answer is generally we shouldn't. We'd be prohibited. Same for a host of reasons, not the least of which we don't want to get too prescriptive into what you do. And you might say, well, that's not fair. You're telling me we got to do it, then you're not telling us if we're on the right track. Part of that issue, and that's a logical position. Part of it, though, is if we get into this, well, you've got to do it this way and only this way. And there should be some flexibility within institutions. It's a institutional responsibility. I'm not trying to pass the buck on that, but we also don't want to get so prescriptive, because later someone could say, well, Ed approved this, and to do what they said, it cost us an additional $500,000 to get the system in place. And so we don't want to put ourselves in that spot. Candidly, we also don't want to have too much of an overreach because of your grant projects. So there is a fine line there. We can talk and help you clarify what the regs say, and and such, but even the regs are pretty broad, letting you create a system and say that this is in compliance with it. Your auditors will be able to help you better than us, candidly, in that effort. A few closing points. Document your project activities and expenditures. I think Sandy said it first. We'll say it again. Document what you do. It's not enough to do the job. You've got to document it. Establish and implement internal control systems that complies with the laws and the requirements of these programs. Create that level of communication. Hire people who are dedicated to doing the job right. We all have a learning curve. We want to do right. We might not know. That's okay. But we've got to be committed to doing the job right. We've got to be committed to understanding what constitutes the reasonable assurance and safeguarding taxpayer dollars. Test those internal controls as risks change and evolve. Check the award terms and conditions. New project directors, man, read over the GANs. They're 30 to 40 pages. They've got the fine print in them, but read them closely to help understand what's expected of you. And of course, when in doubt, call the Ed Program Officer. They're going to be listed in box 3 of your grant award notifications. I put a link in the chat for our computer-based training at ed.gov, 45, 60-minute trainings on a host of topics, including internal controls. It's number 1 on this list. So you can review this, watch this at your leisure with your team. You want to share that with your financial office, business office, make connections, send them a link, or get together on site at your organization, get some popcorn, and make it a little bit of a professional development engagement for all of you. But when in doubt, ask your program person. Robin, I know we're just a little over. I'm going to turn things back to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I certainly want to thank you both, David and Sandy, for this absolutely amazing, informative webinar. I believe our attendees can agree. Let's give them a round of a virtual applause. Thank you. And thank you to the HSI division team. They are on the call. I'm not sure if their video is working. And Jerry Clark, Jimmy Seward, Rick Gagona, Margarita Melendez, Corinne Abrams. Thank you to the entire team, to include our division director, Dr. Stacy Sledjesovic. Again, we will get this valuable information sent out to you, the copy of the presentation slide, to include the video recording once it becomes available. We're wishing you a wonderful day. Thank you again, Dave and Sandy. Very enjoyable. You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
So long, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. And I just responded quickly to a question in the chat. It is program office specific. So I've seen some program offices want you to send an email, some let you report it in the annual report. Some people want a new budget form with a budget narrative. So ask your program officer the most appropriate and timely way to report on budget changes.
And we are still here. Hapadia, and I hope I'm saying your name right. You had your hand raised. Did you want to take a question real quick? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I'm sorry.
But...
I was just trying to clap.
Okay.
And like, what? Thank you so much for this presentation. It's been very helpful.